Hi, this is Daniela, and welcome to Bestie Life, the podcast, where we help you stop burnout now. If you're tired of running on empty, juggling all the things, and wondering when your life is supposed to feel better, you're in the right place. This show is your go-to space for real talk and practical strategies to help you protect your energy, create balance, and actually enjoy the life you're working so hard for. You'll get a mix of solo episodes and honest conversations with guests. My goal is to help you feel less alone, more empowered, and way more in control of your time and energy and well-being. So let's get into it. Hi, this is Daniela with Bestie Life, the podcast. And today I want to talk about something I don't think always gets enough attention. And that's the idea that when something feels simple, especially when it comes to burnout prevention and self-care, it's really easy to dismiss it as something not too serious or too small to really matter or make a difference. But here's the truth. Making it simple is the power move. It's not a shortcut. It's not a watered down version. It's actually the result of years of practice and experience. And the more simple something is, the more likely you're actually going to do it and stick with it. And that's where the impact comes from. So I'm so excited to dive into this today. So grab your favorite beverage, grab something to write with, and let's dive in. So let's talk a little bit about where this misconception comes from about something being simple not being effective. Because unfortunately, we live in a world where hard and complicated often gets confused with being valuable. If a strategy feels easy, people sometimes assume, well, it must not be enough to fix the problem. It must not be important. But think about it. How many times have you heard advice like go for a walk when you're stressed, drink more water, shut down your screens before bed, focus on your breathing, those types of things? And you probably thought, yeah, I know that. But here's the thing. Knowing it and actually doing it consistently are two very different things. And so a lot of times when people hear me talk about burnout prevention, they sometimes assume that sounds nice, but it's too simple to really help. Or it feels like something you've already heard and you already know, but you're not actually putting it into practice and putting it into action on a regular basis. And so they don't see necessarily the years of trial, error, research, and practice that it took me to strip away a lot of the fluff and really pare down these strategies and systems into what actually works, which is why it can seem very simple on the outside, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's too simple to help you or that it's not going to be effective. So how do we overcome this way of thinking, these misconceptions? And it comes down to your mindset, reframing your mindset, shifting your mindset about this type of thought is where we're going to start to be able to make a difference. So one of the things I want you to do first is say to yourself, simple doesn't mean small. Simple doesn't mean weak. Simple doesn't mean ineffective. Now we're going to shift that to telling yourself simple means sustainable, simple means repeatable, and simple means powerful. Okay? So if you need to write those phrases down, put them on Post-its on your bathroom mirror. I keep Post-its on my bathroom mirror all the time so that at least twice a day I'm reinforcing new thoughts that I want to think, new ways of thinking. Because a lot of times we have to teach ourselves to undo those thoughts, because if it feels too simple to matter, that's often a lot of times the thing you need more of. And so we have to kind of get in that new way of thinking about things. If you think about professional athletes, they don't necessarily always chase complicated workouts every single day. They're mastering the basics: hydration, rest, stretching. They work on their mindset as well as, weights and those types of things. But it's all those basics stacked day after day after day that make them elite, practicing their jump shot, practicing touchdown, practicing that throw. Your burnout prevention and self-care routine, it's the same thing when it comes to being elite in your field, being the professional in your day-to-day job as well as in your life. And so the power is making these strategies doable so that you can't even just talk yourself out of them. They just become part of who you are and how you're living each day. So I want to give you a couple real life examples that you can maybe start to implement on a day-to-day basis. One of them has to do with maybe your bedtime boundaries. And so instead of, overhauling your whole sleep schedule, thinking you need this elaborate routine or have to go to bed hours earlier, try one small move. And that might be setting a phone-free sleep space. That one, we don't even realize, can ripple into such a deeper rest, better focus, and more energy the next day, just not having our phones near us, because we're not going to hear those notifications going off. It's not going to be the first thing we grab in the morning. And I know so many times people are like, oh, but that's my alarm, and I set multiple alarms. There are devices out there, old school alarm clocks, new alarm clocks, pillow shakers, that can help you wake up in the morning without needing your phone to be that first item. So maybe look at setting that boundary when it comes to your bedtime routine and your sleep space. Another one could be adding maybe walking meetings. You don't always need an hour-long workout to count as movement. If you take maybe some calls, whether you work from home or even at an office, if you take some of your calls while walking, whether it's in a building or outside, you've built movement into your day. And definitely if you go outside, you've added some fresh air as well, without having to carve out a ton of extra time. I've even known people, if they don't have that freedom to be able to walk all over the place and chat, they've added those walking pads at their desk and are able to just kind of walk while you're talking. A lot of times, especially standing, but then adding that walking helps to give a different energy to what you're saying. And so that can also make you more successful, productive, and stronger. And then the last one is called the one less rule. And so instead of saying yes to everything, practice saying no to one thing a week. And it doesn't have to be a huge thing. It doesn't have to be that important request from your boss or things like that. It might be declining watching that extra show before you go to bed so that you're not binging all sorts of shows late into the night. Or maybe delegating a household chore to somebody else in your home so that you're not always the one doing it. That one small change makes room now for maybe a different yes in your life, whether it's yes to yourself and adding some self-care, yes to time with somebody else, those types of things. So by taking one less thing off your daily plate, you're going to start to see that you're making room for other things. So I know these can sound really simple, and honestly, that's the whole point. You don't need them to be massive or feel super complicated. You need them to be doable, because when you actually follow through, that's where the results are going to start stacking and compounding on themselves. For me, it took years of trial and error to get to where I am today. My personal development journey started over 20 years ago. And at the time when I first started, I did used to think I had to do big dramatic changes, add these massive practices or do big gym workouts, join different things, do all sorts of stuff. But every time I overcomplicated things, I wasn't able to stick with it. I gave up quickly and, I continued to burn out and struggled with getting out of it. And what I found finally worked was practicing some of these basics so consistently that they became second nature. A daily gratitude practice of listing just 3 to 5 things I was grateful for every day. Sounds so simple, and I know when I share some of the things that I was grateful for, like that the sun was out, or that someone held the door for me, or I had my favorite banana smoothie. I know they sound simple because that's exactly what started to make a difference. Those were the moments that made me smile. And that's exactly what I want for you. I don't want you working harder at your self-care and having it become something that stresses you out. I want you building habits that slip into your day just so effortlessly and start to move that needle that's where you start to have that massive impact. So next time you catch yourself thinking that's too simple to make a difference, I want you to pause and flip the script and ask yourself, what if the simple thing is exactly what I've been missing? And that's where the power is. That's where burnout prevention in general becomes more than just a concept. It becomes a lifestyle that you start to live every single day. So if this episode hit home for you, here's what I want you to do next. I want you to try one simple move this week. Maybe pick a different way to take your calls at work. Maybe I want you to do one less thing. Maybe pick a different bedtime routine. There's so many different options. Pick one thing that you can start adding. Even steal my daily gratitude practice. And then DM me or email me, leave me a comment and let me know not only what you picked, but what you started to notice after 3 days, after 5 days. And if you're ready to go deeper, that's exactly what we do together when we work in the Exhausted to Empowered formula. We create simple self-care strategies that feel so doable. You not only actually stick with them, but you find you're doing them throughout your entire day. And if you're ready to go deeper on this strategy, this is exactly what I help you do. In the Exhausted to Empowered formula, we create self-care strategies that feel so doable, you'll actually stick with them and start to transform your day and your life. So grab a free spot on my calendar so that we can talk about where you're nailing it, where you can use a little bit more support, and what that can look like for you. So thanks so much for hanging out with me today. And remember, simple doesn't mean small. Simple is the power move to your success. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you got something out of this episode that really made you feel seen, supported, or just a little bit more grounded. If you have any questions or thoughts, I'd love to hear from you. And if you're up for it, please leave me a 5-star review. That will help more people find the show and join this community. I'll leave you with 2 of my favorite quotes. Alone we may be strong, but together we're stronger. And when we support each other, incredible things happen. So let's keep showing up for ourselves and each other, and maybe even have some fun while we're at it. I'll talk to you soon.